All right, welcome back to another live with Diabetes 180. We are going to be talking about herbs and blood sugar control with a clinical herbalist. This is not the first time we've had an herbalist on our channel, but this is going to be awesome because we have a lot of people struggling with blood sugar control, and there are natural ways to find relief. Right? We do emphasize diet changes, but it's nice to know what nature has in store in its medicine cabinet, right? And who better to tell us and share with us than a clinical herbalist, right? Someone who went to school and has education and experience on what herbs are good for blood sugar control. So before we go into the chat and introduce our guest, just a few reminders. We are broadcasting on multiple channels, so I'll do my best to answer questions when the live is over. But if you have a question, the best time to answer it, get it answered, is during the live. Okay, so these are going to be recorded and you could share them with your friends and family. But if you have a question, post it in the chat room. And as we talk and as our guest is speaking, I'll be able to look at your questions. Right. Let's start off with keeping it simple, though. If you're watching right now and you're not too shy, let us know who you are, where you're watching from in the chat room. And I'm in North Carolina. Don, where are you again? I forgot.
Yeah, I'm in Maryland.
You're in Maryland. Okay, yeah, not too far. Okay. Thank you. First off, thank you so much for sparing your time to share your knowledge, your expertise with the audience. Really, really happy to have you on. I think we first met each other at Women's Wellness in Howard University.
Howard U. Yep.
Yeah. So yes, you were speaking on women's wellness and you seem so knowledgeable. I said, okay, I got to get you on the channel. We would love talking about herbs. I think people in general, you probably would agree, are starting to get more interest in herbal medicine, right? And support for many conditions.
Yep.
So just going into it, we don't spend too much time on the channel, more than 30 to 40 minutes. So I figured we should just dive right in, huh? Okay. All right. So first off, Donna, you could start off with just what got you started, like why herbs, right? So like, how did you get into it? You're such a niche.
And first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me awesome. to this. I was really excited to hear from you after we met at Howard U. So.
Awesome.
So thanks for that.
Yeah.
So I'll try to make it quick, but the super short answer is it's my midlife crisis. Okay. But the slightly longer answer is that I'd always been really interested in plants, and I was doing a lot with growing vegetables. And then there was a school across the street from where I work in my day job, and that was in herbal medicine. And the idea of using plants as medicine was really intriguing. And I started taking classes over there. And then next thing I know, I'm in the master's program. Next thing I know, I'm in the student clinic. And so I got a Master of Science in herbal medicine. And I also have since been given registered herbalist status with the American Herbalist Guild. So that was about 10 years ago, and I've been seeing clients ever since.
That's 10 years ago. Awesome. And obviously, something I always ask is like, so what benefits did you personally experience, I guess? Because that's one thing I often find. People find that they heal themselves in some way, and they're inspired to heal others.
You mean in terms of how herbs used for myself?
Yeah, herbs, or just your lifestyle changes or that got you into health. Yeah.
I think over the years, I've made really gradual changes. I think and when I was in my early 30s, I was thinking, boy, I'm getting older now. That was a long time ago, but I came up with something called maintenance before damage control.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of been my mantra. To be honest, my father died when I was very young. He was very young, and I was just getting to, I wanted to try to just treat my body and myself as well as possible. So I joined a gym. I started looking at my diet. And I do think that the herbal medicine was kind of like another extension of that. And as I said, really the idea of using plants to heal myself is really fascinating. And I'm always very humbled with when I work with a client and they say, the things that we do are really helping them. And I'm always humbled and a little bit surprised, to be honest. It's always a pleasant surprise.
I know the feeling. So you probably get a lot of clients who struggle with high blood sugar levels, right? Whether they're diabetic, pre-diabetic. First off, let's just keep it simple. Are there herbs that can help? You hear a lot about, stuff online. There's always things popping up. Take this one herb and your blood sugar will be normal in 2 days or 2 weeks.
Well,
yeah, yeah.
Right. And yes. And so the short answer is yes, there are some herbs that can help. And it's a yes with a lot of, I don't want to say caveats, but I do want to be clear that as an herbalist, I largely use herbs in my practice. And I don't mean to sound flippant there, but what I mean by that is I use actual whole herbs, plants, and not, I don't use a lot of supplements. I will use supplements on occasion.
Okay.
But what I was trained to do was to take the whole plant, and I'll use teas and powders and water alcohol extracts. But I think it's really important if we're talking about supplements or something that you're going to take. Quality is really, really important. Okay. And so it's not necessarily as simple as, hey, I tell you a specific herb and then you just go to the pharmacy and just pick up a supplement.
Tell us then, what's the difference? Because I know a lot of people, you probably might assume they're the same thing, what's the difference between a supplement and herb?
Well, so, and that's a great question. So a supplement is in a lot of ways not an herb.
Okay.
It's not a plant. If it's processed, the more processed it is, the further away it is from the plant. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so I'm a big fan of using the plant in as close to its natural state, and that's one thing. But the second thing, and perhaps maybe the more dangerous thing is, and maybe you guys talk about this, but the supplement industry is not regulated very well in this country. And so there's actually no guarantee that what's actually in the product is what it says it is. And so you have to be really, really careful that you only purchase from reputable companies. Yeah. So that's a big difference too.
Yeah, that's huge. And we do talk about that a lot in the channel, and why it's one of the main reasons why in my program I focus on diet and lifestyle or changes, because number one, a lot of people use it as supplements as a band-aid. Like they think it could replace lifestyle, but right. Perhaps more important than that is the fact that there is poor regulation. I think it's greater than 60% of the stuff that's on the market. It does not really have what's in the bottle, or has right. additives or dangerous additives in some cases. So yeah, it's definitely not a recommended route. So tell us then, of course, what are the herbs that you have noticed are good for regulating blood sugar levels, and then how we find them? What's the best way to obtain them?
Yeah. Okay. So I did my homework a little bit and to try to refresh my memory. But a couple herbs, and I always say this is, and I also want to be careful here too. Mm-hmm. That as an herbalist, one of the things that we do is we treat the person, not the disease. Mm. And so I'm going to tell you, several herbs, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every herb is going to be the right herb for every person. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so, and maybe we'll talk about that later, because I think one of your later questions was, how do you get more information and things? So, but in general, a couple of herbs that I would use in my practice that are candidates for a person. Cinnamon is one. And I love cinnamon. I think it's super safe. it tastes great. People love it. Just in general, cook with it liberally, use it liberally. Bake with it. It's also used as a preservative as well. Another one that maybe is less common, gymnema comes up. Is one that I would use.
Okay.
Fenugreek.
Yeah.
Is another herb.
That one. How do you say that second one? So cinnamon. Yeah, I definitely want to highlight cinnamon. I'm always hearing cinnamon is good. I'm often heard that Ceylon cinnamon would be preferred than if you can get that. And what's cool is, like you said, you can use it almost in everything, right? So
and the other thing with the cinnamon, I'm sorry I cut you off, but
no, go ahead. Yeah.
The other thing about cinnamon is because it's got kind of a sweet taste, you can kind of use it to replace the sugar, right? That's another trick that we herbalists like to use. I don't like to say, well, don't eat sugar, don't eat this, don't eat that, but I like to tell you what to do instead. And cinnamon and some of these other spices can be really good as flavor enhancements to help you, if you're trying to lower your sugar intake.
Like, okay, yeah, that's a good advice. Yeah. So that second one though, that second herb, I Jemima, is that
Gymnema? Yeah.
Let me actually write that for the audience. How do you spell that? Because I know I've heard
Gymnema.
Gymne.
Gymnema.
Yeah, I know it's one of the tough ones to spell. Just want to show that on the screen there. But yeah, is that how you spell it?
It's with a G.
Oh, oops. So,
yeah, but yes, yeah.
There you go. That's
and that one's interesting. Because this one is really good for kind of like the physical cravings. And it's got this really interesting property that if you taste it, and you can get it like some powder, and if you put it on your tongue, it will turn the taste of sweet. It will make it taste really bad. So you can actually use it as like like a mental deterrent, because it will actually temporarily dull the taste of sweet.
Okay.
So I think that's why it comes up a lot, but it does have some actual internal properties to help, with insulin and things like that.
Awesome.
But sometimes I'll give it to somebody and either give them a powder or a tincture and a dropper, and you just put a couple drops on your tongue.
Okay.
And that can help just stave off a craving for a little while.
Okay. Nice. Thank you for that. So tell us, you were telling after that, what was the other one? I cut you off.
Fenugreek is another one.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Fenugreek.
All right. I think I know how to spell that one.
It's with an F though.
Is it F? Really? I could have sworn it was a PH.
It is
I guess I don't know how to spell it. Hey guys, that's my weakness. That's always been my weakness.
It's all good.
I feel every spelling bee.
Yeah, you got it.
I was like, this is definitely a PH.
Yeah,
but fenugreek. All right.
Yeah, fenugreek. And the other one, and I use fenugreek in a powder as well sometimes. It's got a kind of an interesting taste. I'm not sure what I could describe it.
Is it true that it can turn your armpits to smelling like maple syrup?
I have not heard that one.
That's actually what I've heard. I want to say that I kind of get the sense, because I use fenugreek, and I kind of get the sense that it does have a maple syrupy type of scent to it.
Yeah, I don't.
Maybe
almost like licorice, like a weird licorice.
Yeah. But it's something that probably people don't know about, that it is good for blood sugar.
And I would use that. And I do also say too that most herbalists, we don't use herbs singly. We blend them together.
Yeah, that makes sense.
To get synergistic effects, and also a lot of times, I mean, people are multifaceted. So they're not coming to me just for one thing.
Yes.
So a lot of what I do is I try to put herbs together that complement each other. I imagine a lot of people with diabetes have other challenges as well, in addition to blood sugar. You know, this is where herbs can be really popular, really, really powerful. You know, because maybe they have some digestive issues. So I might want to add some bitter herbs to help enhance digestion.
Okay.
You know, maybe there's some fat digestion issues. So I want to give liver supporting herbs because, you know, the fat is metabolized in the liver. So it's really, there's really an art and a science to what I learned to do.
So that's probably why a person, especially with diabetes, should be working with an herbalist. Do you think? Like, because it's one thing to take this information, and you know, another thing to have someone who specializes it being able to guide you. You know, and
yeah, and I mean, I think that's generally true of most professionals. I don't want to claim that as, you know, just an herbalist, but,
in addition to other,
but yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, I think the strength in working with a trained herbalist is that, yeah, I mean, we understand, you know, how to put the herbs together. You know, so some of the herbs that I mentioned, they act differently. You know, they help with blood sugar regulation in different ways. So you might want to pick a couple different ones.
Okay.
To approach the problem in a multifaceted way.
That was going to be my question. The mechanism action is probably different with every herb, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's some similarities, and there's not always a lot of research on that. You know, herbs aren't real profitable to research, whole herbs. But back to working with an herbalist, the other advantage of that is I'm also trained to look out for any herb drug interactions. One thing I always like to say, just because it's natural doesn't mean it won't kill you.
Yeah, so that's a very good topic. Before we go into that, I just want to just acknowledge some questions that we got while we were talking. It's so easy to get lost in conversation, forget people sometimes might have a question. First off, just thank you for those who are watching and tuning in. Sophia and Joan, greeting from Georgia and Boston, and all y'all who are watching. I think Sophia had a question. Let me find it here. Sophia wants to know if supplement brands, certain supplement brands. I don't know if you know about any supplement brands. That might be a harder question to ask, because like you know, you said. But her questions are: she says the supplement brands I use are Gaia and or New Chapter.
New Chapter, yep.
Okay, Holy Basil for stress. If you have time, do you know about these brands and are they good? I don't know if you can speak to that.
So you know, standard caveat: I don't represent any herb or supplement company.
Okay, awesome, good to know. Yeah.
I do like Gaia herbs a lot, and I actually do like New Chapter a lot as well. Those are two brands that I would trust. Yeah, just you use Holy Basil. I think Holy Basil is great. I also think that Holy Basil makes a really awesome tea, and it tastes great. And so I would encourage you to consider making a tea out of Holy Basil and maybe some other herbs, because I've also learned that, you know, again, there's something about drinking a tea. You know, that is making the tea and drinking the tea, especially for something stress related. It slows you down. You know, you have to boil the water, you have to steep it. You know, it takes you a while to enjoy it. So don't underestimate the medicine that whole process can give you, that just taking a capsule doesn't provide. So just consider that. Holy Basil is an amazing herb.
No, just what you just said, Don, is pretty deep. Like, you know, I didn't mention this to you, but you know, we are very spiritual based, faith based business, and I always like to highlight how the natural remedies that God has given us are always simple. You know, they're not complicated at all. Like, it's like the great healer does not want to confuse anyone. He doesn't want to. He doesn't have a market share in wellness. You know, he wants it. He wants equal opportunity when it comes to health. And we get surprised. We can surprise ourselves how uncomplicated, you know, getting our bodies into a state of health is. But thank you for answering that. And I think we might have had another question here. I want to pause here. Well, someone was confirming fenugreek is good for blood sugar, and I think you answered that. And then someone else asked a question about fenugreek being safe to take when on blood thinners. I think we were actually going to discuss herbs in general, safety too. Does it, that interfere with blood thinners?
Yeah. So I'm not familiar with that. I would have to look that up.
Okay. Yeah. That's fair.
And so I mean, how do I want to say this? So I think that there's a lot of misinformation about herbs out there, and I think a lot of the what one may consider the more mainstream websites that are more conventional medicine are overly cautious with what you hear. Like, because I've had people find things that I've had people find things that, like, holy basil is not good for people with thyroid, I think, was an example. And any of my reputable sources that are very herb centered, I think I found there was like one study with one person in it that showed a thyroid issue or something, and then that becomes like the norm. And so so I don't mean to discount the question. I'm going to formally answer it is that I would have to look it up, but I have I have my and I can my herbal.
You have an herbal Bible?
My botanical safety handbook.
Okay, good. Well, that might be something, obviously we could circle back to when we do have information, but generally I like that question because especially when it comes to people on blood thinners, they usually have to be careful with all types of foods and medicines. So to answer that, I would say I shouldn't say obviously, but definitely tell your doctor when you're starting a new herbal practice.
Right.
Just like you would tell your doctor if you're starting to consume more vegetables, because what they're doing is they're screening your clotting factors, right? So that the medications can be adjusted up or down based on how you're reacting to the change. So don't discount, don't throw it away. You're right. But, work with your practitioner, let them know what changes you're making, and your body it will be able to work with most herbs, and regardless of that, the fact you're on blood thinners.
Right. Yep. And I will just to finish that. So I think it's true that there are a lot of herbs that are going to interfere with blood thinners. Because I think blood thinners is like one of the really, medications that I really need to look out for. What I don't know right now is if fenugreek is one of them. I'd have to formally look that up. But when I see blood thinners,
you have to be mindful. Okay, any new regimen you gotta check because it can interfere. And the good thing is you can make adjustments with the dose as when you're talking to your doctor in advance about the changes. So that was questions we got in, and greetings to everyone else. I think we had a question that might be a little hard to answer right now. Someone who's asking about getting off dialysis. But for that, Pete, I would definitely say, and Donna, this is where we both, definitely connect, being plant forward, right? Getting rid of not just processed junk, but also animal foods from our diet. Animal proteins put a lot of stress on our kidneys. So when we're eating more plant-based, plant forward, something we teach on our channel, that's the best chance you have to delay dialysis. Getting off is definitely very, very difficult, extremely. Some would say it's not possible. However, I've seen cases where, I don't know if you've seen cases, Donna, where it has happened, but usually it has to be very, very, very early stages, like, just started.
Yeah. And so I see the question there, and it is out of my scope of practice to answer that question. Like, I do not practice medicine. And so, I can't formally answer that. I think, though, to Lewis, to your point, I think, there definitely are herbs that can help maybe improve renal function.
Okay. Hey, topic for another live, huh? We're gonna do this again now, like next week.
I'd have to brush up on my notes because it's not something I've seen a lot in my practice.
We work for us to do some research on and come back on.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the topic though. So we talked about cinnamon, fenugreek, gymnema. I think I'm saying that right. And what else would you recommend maybe adding to our table? Yep.
Yeah, so there's one other herb that I use that's directly for blood sugar, and then there's always like adjunct herbs
Okay.
as well. But bitter melon
Okay.
is one, and this is, and I admit this is one that I would use a capsule,
Okay.
because it's
You would.
it's
Okay.
because it's bitter.
Okay. Well, yeah.
And I actually have had some success with some folks
Okay.
using bitter melon in it, but it's in addition to diet, good diet, good movement. I like to use the word movement over exercise.
Yeah. 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 Like that. Yeah.
And a movement could be anything, dance in your living room.
Mhm.
And getting good sleep and all of those things, I'm sure you guys probably talk about as well.
Mhm. Absolutely. So yeah, thank you for that. That's a very good list to start with. So and then like you said, these are things that hopefully you guys are taking notes and writing these down that you would recommend. You can take all, it's not like one works better than the other, but they all work so differently.
Differently, right?
I like that word synergistically to improve blood sugar levels. And I feel like when a person is thinking about herbal options, your other only option really, especially if you're on a pre-diabetic or diabetic level, is medications, right? And medications come with so many side effects and risks, right? And so if you're a person, let's speak to that population of people who are now already on medications, is it safe for them to start throwing herbs along with those meds, or should
So what can happen is that you get what we call an additive effect.
Okay.
So say, if you're on metformin and you start up with a pretty serious regimen of some of these herbs,
Mm-hmm.
the effect is because it's additive, you may start to need less metformin. And so in that sense, you need to monitor your blood sugar. I'm sure you're probably monitoring it pretty closely anyway. But if I have somebody who is taking a medication like metformin or something like that, I generally request to try to work with their doctor. Again, I don't control or prescribe medication, and so I cannot advise, take it, don't take it.
Yeah.
But I tell them, please make your doctor aware that we're doing this. Monitor, do the blood work. So it can be safe when it's done, under supervision of a professional.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, the effect is, you may need less of the insulin or, whatever medication you're taking.
Very good advice. So yeah, obviously you still work with your doctor
Yep.
after making the adjustments, and it's only a good thing if your doctor's like, okay, well, let's stop dropping. Maybe we could cut the dose of your medication in half.
Right.
So that is awesome to think about. And so it is safe to use these medications. Use herbs with medications. You have any recommendations on like where to find ones that are reputable sources of finding herbs for medicinal purposes?
Like finding the whole herbs.
Yeah, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, certainly, if working with an herbalist, the way I operate is I work with a compounding facility where I actually I custom formulate for each individual, and then I send the formula to the compounding facility, and they'll make up the herbs. If you wanted to dabble in your own, a good place for what we call dried herbs, teas, or powders is a it's a company called Mountain Rose Herbs.
Mountain Rose Herbs.
Okay. Mountain Rose Herbs. Yep. I really like them a lot. They have a really wide selection. They're out in, I think they're in Oregon. Most of the companies that I know, the reputable herb companies, are out west.
Okay.
I would not trust getting a dry herb from overseas.
Okay.
There's a lot of adulteration in products from China and India and things like that. So you want to be really careful with where you're getting things.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple supplement companies that we already mentioned, but I think in general, one way to look at a supplement company is if things that I look for, are their products third-party tested?
Mm-hmm.
Is their website transparent with what's in it? Are they certified? And if you send them an email with questions, how do they answer those questions? Those are things that I do as an herbalist. If I'm looking at a new company, I email them, ask them questions. The companies that are more reputable will openly answer the questions that you have.
They have nothing to hide, essentially. Right. So it's actually a white cord.
Right. There are some nice off-the-shelf teas in the grocery store now, to be honest. Mm-hmm. Traditional Medicinals is a really nice company.
Okay.
I like Celestial Seasonings too. They have some nice blends. Maybe not quite as many medicinal ones, but so.
All right, seasonings. All right, let's go ahead and post some of these so people can see. Oh, sorry.
Celestial Seasoning. Yep.
That's Celestial Seasonings. How you spell that? Okay. Mountain Rose Herbs, is that a website?
Yeah, I think it's just mountainroseherbs.com. But if you just did a search on Mountain Rose Herbs, yep, okay. That's it.
So you guys go ahead. I'm just going to post these so people can write them down. They're also going to be in the chat, so you guys can circle back and look for these. I think it's and then you said one other one that you like off the shelf.
Oh, Traditional Medicinals is a good. They make tea, largely tea bags, but you can get them in the grocery store, health food stores.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's it.
Ideally, if you can get dried herbs, it'd be better than and less processed, the better, right? If you can.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, there are some exceptions to that, okay. because some, and the other thing too is, I think you had a question about dosage and things. I think dosage is actually very important. A lot of times in the off-the-shelf capsules, the dose in those capsules is a lot smaller than what I would give you as a whole herb.
So you're not gonna get the full benefit.
So to get the full, either that, or you have to take 5 or 6 pills.
That's what get the benefit
for one dose. So that's another difference as well.
Don, we covered a lot of good stuff, man. I need to get you back on for sure. I want at this time to let people know how they can work with the herbalist. How, like you being my top choice. Okay, so like how someone who's watching, maybe you have a website I could show you the people to. Okay, I think this would be a good time to show a website.
Yeah, I mean, my website is, so my business is Greenhaven Living. Yep. www.greenhavenherbalist.com. Okay. I have a contact page. You are more than welcome to reach out. And you can reach out with any questions. I love to answer questions, but if you'd like to make an appointment, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Yes.
One of the other things I like to leave people with is herbal medicine is the medicine of the people. And that was another thing that I really, really liked about it. Grow herbs, make teas out of them, cook with spices, flavor up your life, and whatever it is you're doing, you're doing your body some good.
That's great advice.
Yeah, just bring them into your life. Yeah,
bring them into your life. Would you say that's probably, if you're going to start anywhere, a place to start, right? Just start using more herbs in the kitchen.
Yeah. And notice and play with them a little bit and observe how they make you feel, good or bad. When I eat cinnamon or when I have cinnamon, it makes me feel this, and use that, use that to guide you.
Awesome. Well, guys, before we close off, I do want to let everybody know, if you're new to the channel, we do have opportunity. If you are diabetic and you want to work with a diabetes reversal health coach, just scan the QR code. That hooks you up with a free consultation. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and follow us. We have a lot of series talks like this on improving your diabetes health. But our focus on this program is reversal. All right, so if that's something you want to do, you want to come off medications, you want to have your A1C go back to normal, then scan the QR code. If you're watching on your phone, just take a screenshot, scan it later, and we'll be able to work with me as a diabetes reversal health coach. So Donna, thank you again. Thank you everybody for tuning in. This is my close off always. Beloved, I pray above all things that you may prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. We'll see you next week. And Donna, we're definitely going to do this again.
All right, thanks.